Welcome back to the Scaredy Cat Guide, my friends. My name is Jenny, and today we are talking about Flight of Passage in Disney's Animal Kingdom. Now, it is a rainy day here at the parks, and as a result, the lines are super long for these indoor attractions. We are looking at 120 minutes, but it's worth it, and I'm excited to ride this with you guys. If you're new here, this is the channel where we talk about Disney and anxiety, we talk about sensory issues, and really just anything that you might want to know if you're an anxious rider in Disney World, just like me. So without further ado, let's dive into those details. This one-of-a-kind attraction contains large screens, some rushing visuals, loud noises, and a few moments of peril. On top of that, it also contains some simulated heights and thrill elements, and of course, a claustrophobic queue and ride restraints. So let's start off by talking about motion sickness. Now, as a flight simulator, it may come as no surprise that you will be dealing with a large screen and rushing visuals. Now, a lot like Soarin' or some of the other simulators in the park, these elements could trigger your motion sickness if they are things that you might have had a problem with before on other rides. Now, just like the other ones, this attraction is very, very immersive. You really cannot see the edges of the screen. It really feels like you are there, but at the end of the day, it's still a simulator, it's still a screen, you've got those rushing visuals, and if motion sickness is something that you struggle with, you might just want to take a moment to consider this one. Now, when it comes to sensory issues, you will also find some piped-in smells on this attraction, as well as wind effects and some sudden loud noises. Now, while I wouldn't call this attraction really intentionally scary, I would call it thematically intense. And what I mean by this is you will definitely find some moments of peril on this ride. In other words, you will be put in a simulated situation that could appear dangerous. You know, you're taking some really steep dives while you're riding on the back of this banshee. You will get up close and personal with some kind of dangerous looking creatures and animals. And overall, it's just a lot more intense than, say, Soarin', another flight simulator in the parks. Now again, they're not really meant to be very scary or spooky in any way, but this is certainly no leisurely stroll through the park either. Now when it comes to heights, it is important to note that although this is a simulator, the whole theme of this attraction is simulated flight. Now just like Soarin', you are meant to feel like you are actually flying hundreds of feet above the ground. Now of course we know that's not true, but believe me, this is so immersive. It really does feel like you are up that high, so if you have a problem with heights, you might just want to consider it. Now, while you're not actually in suspended seats, the ride vehicles are actually oriented across 3 stories. So you could be on the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd floor. Now, if you remember with Soarin', the seats actually swung upwards and you were suspended anywhere from 30 to 50 feet above the ground. It is not like that on this attraction. Instead, you take the stairs up to the floor that you will be riding on, and you do not leave that floor. You don't go up, you don't go down. The ride vehicles do move, of course, with that simulated motion, but you are not swinging up dozens of feet or anything like that. So rest assured, your feet will not actually leave the ground. So we know that this ride has simulated heights, but we also have simulated drops, high speeds, and maneuvers. These thrill elements really do feel intense, in my opinion. Even though, like I said, you are not actually hurtling through the air at high speeds, you're not actually going down that drop, it really does feel like it. I definitely had that stomach in your throat feeling as I was riding, and even though the actual range of motion of these ride vehicles is fairly limited, the movements feel very real. As you can see from this video, the bikes are definitely moving up and down, side to side, tilting back and forward, but you're not actually doing any sort of roller coaster maneuver. However, like I said, it definitely can feel that way. Now let's talk about arguably the most intense part of this ride, and that would be the claustrophobic elements. Now, like many other attractions in Disney World, you definitely will encounter some tight spaces in parts of the queue. This one I definitely think is worth mentioning because the wait time can be so long and you can be in that queue for such a long time. You've got those rocky walls that we've come to see in Journey of the Little Mermaid and Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, different queues like that. But you've also got some kind of tight hallways and some small rooms. Also, in my opinion, the pre-show rooms feel especially claustrophobic. Now, these are small rooms that you all go into together with everyone that's going to be seated on your row. You watch a short video presentation. There are 2 of these, but while you're in this kind of chamber, the door does shut behind you and it can feel a little intimidating if you were somebody that struggles with claustrophobia like me. Now rest assured, these pre-show segments don't last very long. Of course, sometimes you might encounter a short delay while you're in there, but for the most part, it moves pretty quickly. But I definitely just wanted to mention so that you can be aware. Now, possibly the most claustrophobic part of this ride are the ride restraints. So the ride vehicles consist of individual bikes that are oriented in a row of 8. As I said before, there are 3 stories in this attraction, so you will either be on a row on the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd floor. And as you are on the ride, you really will not be able to tell which floor you are on. You will not be able to tell that you are any higher or lower than anybody else riding this ride. All you see is the screen in front of you. The only reason I mention this is just so you have a perfectly clear idea of how this attraction works. So here's where the claustrophobia comes in. Once you take a seat on your bike, you will have back and leg restraints that will swing up onto your body to hold you in place. This to me feels very claustrophobic because instead of having a lap bar or a harness or something like that, you feel these restraints on your back and on the back of your legs, and you feel very locked in there. Now, of course, this is for a reason. Disney just wants to keep you safe on this attraction, but if you have a hard time with restraints on other rides, just know that these are different from a lot of the restraints that you'll see around the parks, and if you're like me, it might just be triggering for you too. Now, the good news for our claustrophobic friends is that the ride time is only 4 minutes and 30 seconds. This is a pretty average ride time for other attractions in Walt Disney World, and it's also worth noting, like I said before, there are 2 pre-show segments that last a few minutes each. Overall though, the whole experience once you get to the pre-show room and through the entire ride and everything is just a few minutes long. So if you're really concerned about that claustrophobic element or anything else on this ride, just know that it doesn't last too long. One more thing I'll mention is this ride can be a little bit slow loading. I have definitely gotten on this attraction before, taken a seat, gotten locked in with the restraints, and then had to wait a good while before the ride actually kicked off. Rest assured, the ride will set off soon, but there can be some short delays. I'll also mention here that the ride vehicles do have some air blowing into your face. For me, this is really helpful as a claustrophobic person, just feeling like there's a little bit of fresh air. But just know, if you are claustrophobic, this is definitely an attraction as a whole that I would pay attention to. And now that you have all the facts, let's actually go hop in line. We have a long wait ahead of us, but it's gonna be worth it. Let's go. You'll find the entrance to this attraction in Pandora, and you'll enter under the beautiful floating mountains above you. Once walking into the queue, you'll enter an outdoor area that is landscaped to the nines. It looks amazing, like you are really trekking through Pandora. There are massive trees, lots of beautiful plants, lots of fans, which is nice if you're there on a particularly hot day. And as a whole, this part of the queue just winds back and forth for a while. Finally, you'll make your way into a rocky area. You'll see more amazingly themed props as you make your way into the indoor section. So once entering this little cave, you'll find yourself inside. This area is kind of like the grotto area in Journey of the Little Mermaid, where there's definitely some open air, some kind of natural windows letting in some sunshine, but definitely this part of the queue could feel claustrophobic to some people. As you wind your way through, you'll see some beautiful cave drawings and paintings on the rocks before making your way through another rocky hallway and ending up in another part of this cavernous area. Now this part felt a little bit more claustrophobic to me, just maybe a little bit tighter. And again, you're in this queue for a very long time typically. Despite that, the ceilings are pretty high. You definitely are still getting some of that fresh air through these openings in the rocks. And before you know it, you'll be moving on through a doorway. Now from here, the queue takes on a more industrial feel. You'll enter these overgrown ruins of these facilities. You'll enter this beautiful bioluminescent area where you get to see these glowing plants. From there, you'll continue on. The line will just weave back and forth through this bioluminescent area. It's very beautiful, and this part of the queue does not feel especially claustrophobic to me. In fact, it feels like you're outside, even though you're not. From there, you'll make your way up a ramp and into the lab. This is a really cool section of the queue, and there is a lot to look at. In fact, I was in this area for quite a while waiting in line, and I still feel like I could have spent longer. I wanted to look around some more, so enjoy all the incredible theming and the Easter eggs. Perhaps most notably, there is this incredible animatronic of a Na'vi that you can see floating in this little contraption. It is very, very cool to see. Honestly, it doesn't even look like an animatronic at all. It's just very cool. And honestly, even if you don't ride the ride, I feel like the queue is worth it just for this section. Now, finally, you will leave the lab and come across across your first cast member who will ask how many are in your party. From here, you'll make your way down this concrete area into these lanes that will eventually sort you into your pre-show rooms. Now again, depending on whether you are sent to the first, second, or third floor, you may end up going up some stairs, just like I did here, and then you'll find yourself in the pre-show room. Now this is an area that, like I was saying before, can feel pretty claustrophobic. The door does shut behind you, and for me, that's kind of a trigger for me. I don't like feeling like I am stuck somewhere, but of course, rest assured, cast members have their eyes on you at all times, and if there were any sort of emergency or you just needed to get out, you absolutely could. So after watching this short little pre-show, you will move on into a second room with a second pre-show. A cast member will greet you here and hand you a pair of 3D glasses. Afterwards, you will finally make your way onto the loading platform. Here is where you'll find the row of bikes. There are little storage containers that you can put all of your items in, and then of course you will take a seat. The ride restraints will swing up onto your back and legs, and then like I said, you may have a short delay before the ride gets going. Now once the ride does set off, you will be launched into the beautiful land of Pandora on the back of a banshee. Now, as I said, this is an extremely immersive ride. It really does feel like you're on the back of a banshee. In fact, you can even feel your bike, quote unquote, breathing underneath you. It does move very subtly. And before you know it, you will find yourself soaring through this amazing, beautiful land. Now, as I mentioned, as we were talking about thrills, you definitely will have some dives, some simulated drops, some twists, turns, and other maneuvers that can feel very thrilling. So be prepared for that. You'll also encounter some potentially dangerous situations, some maybe kind of threatening creatures along the way, but rest assured you will make it through this in one piece. There are some more relaxing parts of this ride as well, moments that are quiet and beautiful. One in particular where you're in this bioluminescent cave, and wow, it really is just breathtaking. Of course, you will have the wind effects and the smells coming at you this whole time, but after just 4.5 minutes, the ride will come to an end. At this point, the ride restraints will swing back and you will be free to dismount, grab your belongings, and head for the exit. Your cast member will direct you towards some more concrete hallways. You may go up or down some stairs, depending on which level you're on, and before you know it, you will find your way back out into the beautiful Florida sunshine. And there we have it. What do you think about Flight of Passage? This ride just takes my breath away every single time. I absolutely adore it, and even though it is definitely kind of anxiety inducing for me, I never miss it when I go to Animal Kingdom. To me, it is so worth the claustrophobia. It's so worth some of those thrill elements, and it may not be for you, and that is totally, totally fine. There is absolutely no shame in deciding not to ride a ride, and it will always be waiting for you next time. Really quick, I wanted to give a shout out to my friend John Y. Chen. Thank you so much for letting me use your footage. My camera is not one, unfortunately, that I can use hands-free, so thank you so much for the footage of the actual screen. I wanted to make sure that you guys had a visual for every single aspect of this ride, so thank you so much for letting me use your footage. As always, if you guys want to see more videos like this one, stick around, subscribe, leave a like. We would love to have you in our little community of anxious riders. I hope y'all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.